Hello, this is Bill Meridian speaking to you on February 3rd, 2026 from Vienna. This is an eclipse trigger. You only have to wait a few days to see this work. I'll explain. Now, first of all, we have in addition to the old BillMeridian.com website, we have a new additional website, BillMeridianAstrology.com. Come and visit when you have time. Saturn will transit the eclipse degree from last September 21, 2025. And if you remember, that eclipse was at 29 Virgo 06, close enough to the world point at 0 Libra to be considered an eclipse at the world point. Important because planetary matters at world points affect everybody. The world points 0 Aries, 0 Cancer, 0 Libra, 0 Capricorn, 15 degrees fixed. Taurus, Leo, Scorpio, Aquarius is 45 degrees from the world point. They are not world points, they're an aspect of the world points, as we'll see as we go on. But you see, that eclipse, if you remember, was exactly opposite the forming Saturn-Neptune conjunction. They were about 2 degrees apart here. So why is this important, or what's happening now? Saturn will transit this point in the coming week and will be 0 to the Saturn-Neptune in this chart. In other words, Saturn went retrograde back here earlier Pisces. Now it's going forward. It will oppose the eclipse, which is an eclipse trigger, as I think most of you already know. So here's the timing. Saturn was parallel Saturn in the eclipse chart January 22nd. Saturn was conjunct Saturn, its own place, in the January 29th in the 9/21/25 eclipse chart. Now Saturn will oppose the eclipse exactly February 5th. Well, that's only 2 days from now, which is why I'm putting out this video now. Then Saturn will quincunx Mars in that chart. And then we'll have the February 17th eclipse, which is itself square Uranus. Then Saturn is going to hit Neptune in the eclipse chart on February 20th. Now, right out of the book, the definition of Saturn-Neptune is deflation. In other words, Saturn starts to negate a lot of that inflated currency, which is Neptune. In other words, printing more money than there is a demand for money, which leads to rising prices, as taught by the Austrian School of Economics, which it could also be called the Common Sense School of Economics. So what could possibly go on? That means all the entities that were hit by that eclipse last September, in other words, the eclipse is at 0, we'll call it 0 Libra, they will all now get triggered. So what could possibly happen? Well, here's a Federal Reserve follow-up. The Federal Reserve midheaven is 0 Aries 23, Pluto 0 Cancer 05, the Moon 1 Capricorn 32. Talk about having planets at the world points. This is it, the Saturn, Neptune, and Saturn right up here at the midheaven. Now this is a time chart, December 23rd, 1913. For those of you who haven't read my 1983 article in the NCGR Journal, which you probably haven't, or listened to any prior videos, that's 6:02 p.m. At 6:02 p.m., the president said over a live radio broadcast, I am now signing the bill. And if you go to the Federal Reserve website, it says President Wilson entered the room at 6, walked over to his desk and signed the bill. So it's a solid time, and this really works. So the Federal Reserve, we've had one member, a woman, charged with doing something funny with her mortgages. Then we have Jerome Powell supposedly be under some kind of investigation. But this is the engine that creates inflated currency, and that's what makes gold go up. So let's go to the next slide. Here's the new Federal Reserve Chief, Kevin Warsh, born April 13th, 1970, Albany, New York. I picked 6 a.m. I don't have an accurate birth time. This is a 90-degree dial, and this is his Jupiter-Neptune midpoint. Now, Jupiter-Neptune would be inflationary and has a strong effect on gold and oil prices. And here's the Saturn-Neptune conjunction on a 90-degree dial in his chart. It is right on that midpoint. Now, Warsh has stated that he is much less likely to inflate the currency to print too much money, which is, I believe, what the president wants, and which is certainly warranted. Far too much currency is in circulation. And as we know from Economics 101, Too much money in the system finds its way into speculation, which boosts all of the prices of real estate, gold, stock market, and everything else. So natal Jupiter-Neptune equals the transiting Saturn-Neptune conjunction. So we've seen this is the new Fed chief, and we saw the Saturn-Neptune hitting the Fed chart quite directly. Here is the reaction of gold. Warsh was nominated right up here in one of these days. They're down about $1,000 from a high of about 55, 75 to a low of 4,400. That's the biggest change I've ever seen in the gold price. And I don't think gold is going to recover for some months. Now let's take a look. Here's the stock market reaction. Let me just refresh your memory. Let's go up a few slides. Saturn is transiting Saturn, conjunct Saturn in the September 21 eclipse chart on January 29th. And here is how the stock market reacted on January 29th. It's opened up around this price. It's a little tough to read. Around 69, 69.76 on the Standard & Poor's and dropped all the way down intraday to 68.70. That's a huge drop in one day, and then closed right up here. So in other words, it was just intraday. Bang, bang, in one day. This is Saturn hitting that Saturn in the September 21, 2025 eclipse chart. Now, Persia became Iran March 21, 1935 in Tehran. I picked 12 noon. I don't know what other time there would be. That is when the Shah changed the name of the country from old Persia to new Iran. And I've used this chart for many years, and I know that it works. So Saturn, Neptune is right there. What are they running out of? Water, food, and there's tremendous pressure on the leadership of the country as represented by the sun. And some notable people will be hit. My favorite, Miss World Point herself, Hillary Clinton, born 8 p.m. October 26, 1947. The time comes from astrologer Joyce Levine up in Boston, who bought Hillary's book, went to a book signing, and as Hillary signed the book, "What time are you born, madam?" And Hillary said to Joyce, 8 p.m. So that's where that time comes from. The moon, 29 Pisces 11. Well, who doesn't know who Hillary is? We all do. The moon is at 0 Aries. Everyone knows about her. Then she's got approximately 0 Cancer rising. She's got 0 Capricorn setting with Juno at 29 Sagittarius 42. We can include that. And Mars and Pluto at about 14, 15 fixed in Leo, an aspect. So right now, it looks like she and Bill are going to testify in front of this Senate committee. And that news just hit the wire, was it yesterday or the day before? So we'll see what happens there. And by the way, she also, I left out Venus over here, is at 16, Scorpio 51, about 51 minutes outside of an orb, but I think we can pull that in too. Now here's Cuba, which I just mentioned this I'm going over charts that were reviewed in prior videos. You'll notice Neptune is 2 minutes from 0 Cancer. And you'll notice, again, the Sun and Vulcanus will be hit by this upcoming February eclipse square Uranus. Uranus will be right on the Sun as the eclipse squares it, so no wonder leadership there is under pressure. Cuba turns communist. The Uranus, that is January 2nd, 1959, 1 a.m. Havana. That is from Professor Nick Campion's book. Uranus 15, Leo 37. Saturn is close enough to 0 Capricorn. It's Uranus, Saturn, 135 at the world points. That will also be hit. So we can expect events within the next week, events concerning all of these entities. And here's a new one, the United Nations. This is the horoscope you'll find, again, in Nick Campion's book, World Horoscopes. And it does have a valid birth time. This is the progressed chart, progressed to today. where's the midheaven? 2 Aries, 13. Where will the conjunction be of Saturn and Neptune? But about just past 1 degree. So it's within half a degree of this midheaven. And you will notice that by progression, the progressed sun is 22, Cap 10, and it is opposite Mars at 23, Cancer 41, Saturn at 22, Cancer 22. And the news just came across just before I started this recording that the U.S., which pays for 25% of the UN budget, has stopped paying, and they've actually turned off in their headquarters in Europe. I think that would be in Brussels. They've turned off the electric escalators, so you have to walk up and downstairs, and they're reducing the heating. That's the type of money crunch they're in. So that Saturn Neptune will be up on their MC in the progressed chart. Now, we can expect more of the same. Scandals. Minnesota and now California. I've reviewed Minnesota before, not California. That just hit the wire in the last 2 days. Bad flu and colds. We've had that over here in Europe, and I know you've had it in America. And deflation, the gold price coming down. A lot of prices are falling because the president is striving to remove all the barriers to energy production. So the price of oil, gasoline going down, and of course oil goes into everything. So all products. And so we have the cost level coming down, and we have a genuine, I would say, deflation in the gold and silver price. They've dropped very sharply in only 2 days. So that is the Saturn-Neptune conjunction eclipsed back in September 21, and transiting Saturn, now headed right toward that degree. We only have a couple of days to wait. So once again, the sales part of the presentation, my mundane book, Mastering Geopolitical Prediction. Then there's the old Predictive Power of Eclipse Paths and books, In Search 1, In Search 2. I have Planetary Economic Forecasting is up there. And Planetary Stock Trading 4, Cycles Research Early Warning Service, and so on and so forth. You can get them at BillMeridianAstrology.com or BillMeridian.com. So, thank you for listening. Until the next time, this is Bill Meridian signing off.